Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining us today is Sarita Maybin, an internationally recognized communication expert who teaches us how to navigate the most difficult of conversations. The well-known speaker and best-selling author Les Brown perhaps put it best when he said, Sarita Maybin's skillful combination of positive examples and practical phrases will transform your communication experience. In her 20 plus years as an international speaker, Sarita has spoken for TEDx and worldwide in more than 10 countries. A multiple award winner, including International Who's Who of Professional Women, Who's Who in the Southwest, a Toastmasters champion, and was voted a top 5 communication speaker. Sarita is a former chapter president of the National Speakers Association and a former university dean of students. She literally wrote the book on how to answer the perpetually perplexing question, if you can't say something nice, what do you say? She continues the conversation in her latest book, Say What You Mean in a Nice Way. She's been featured in the media, including Fox, ABC, and Forbes. So please join me now with Sarita Maybin. Well, hello, Sarita Maybin. Thank you for joining me here on Virtually Speaking. How are you?
I'm great, Chris. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's been a long time since I've seen you, and of course, I've known you for a long time. And I love telling people about you because you really have this niche. You really have this area that I feel like you own, which is kind of summarized by the titles of your books, I think, in a lot of ways, and some familiar phrases that a lot of people are used to. If you're not going to say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But you actually realized and teach people that you have to say something, right?
That's right. That's right. And it amazes me, Chris, that no matter where I go, I mean, I've even spoken as far away as Iceland in the Arctic Circle, and they can complete the phrase, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. So it seems to be some sort of universal wisdom, which of course I'm out to debunk.
Right. And of course, your first book is If You Can't Say Something Nice, What Do You Say?
That's right.
Practical Solutions for Working Together Better. And then, of course, your newest book, which when did that come out?
That was actually my pandemic project. I wrote during the lockdown and it came out in October 2020.
Nice. So that's very recent. And that one is called Say What You Mean in a Nice Way, Working Together Better in High Tech Times. So, of course, you're tackling the new world that we live in with all the new technologies that we're also navigating through. So what's your favorite way to communicate? Is it Zoom? Is it the phone? Is it, if you can't be in person, is it Zoom? Is it the phone? Is it text? Is it email? What do you think is your
Well,
favorite and what's the best?
I have to say I've become kind of an email person because it's so efficient and so fast. But one of the things I've noticed is I've invoked this rule of three, as I call it, which is if I go back and forth 3 times and they need clarification, they're unsure, or they have questions, then I just go ahead and have the phone call. So I feel like there's times when we get that signal that they're not getting it, we need to go beyond the scope of the email. So that's when I like talking on the phone, when I need to brainstorm, hash it out.
Yeah, I love this topic and because it really is the center of my universe is communication is how to engage with people and give people what they need and understand where people are coming from. So it's a lot more than just being nice, isn't it? That what
That's
you
right.
what you focused on.
That's right. Yeah, and I think there's a quote, I think I'll attribute that to Tony Robbins, who says, the quality of our communication is the quality of our life. And so my little secret agenda whenever I speak to audiences is to slip in some stuff that we can use in life outside of work, because really it's not just about the workplace, some of the stuff we can take home.
Right, absolutely. So let's go back. I like to kind of trace the steps sometimes of people and how they became one of the best in the world at what they do, like what led them to this. So I know you have been a past president of the NSA in San Diego, which is awesome. And I know that you were a former dean of students who held leadership positions at some state universities. So is that where it all kind of started professionally for you with when you were the dean of students?
Well, I think, wow, I'm trying to think how far do I want to really rewind? Because I always feel, I joke about this in my presentations, that it all started with me being the bossy big sister, oldest of four. when my two younger sisters and brother would always say, "You're not the boss of me." uh, because of course I try to boss them around. And one of the big epiphanies when I went off to college, and then of course as a young grad student trying to supervise people in the university who were more senior, more seasoned than I was, I always felt like the challenge was, how do you get cooperation and get people to buy in even when you're not officially their boss? And I think most of the people in the audiences I speak to, most of the people watching now, probably find that they have to get cooperation and they're not necessarily the boss. So I feel like that quest began even way earlier than the university career.
So how did you get into that position, and what was kind of your educational background as far as leading you into that?
Well, okay, you're prompting me to go again down some dark paths, some paths long ago. I have to say, I was all set to be a journalism major when I was in high school. And I was in high school at an American high school in Germany. My dad was military, so I spent half my childhood overseas. And I remember getting ready to come back to the States to go to college, and I was going to be a journalism major. And I was a co-editor of the high school newspaper. And I remember somebody got the bright idea, probably me, but somebody got the bright idea that every self-respecting newspaper has to have an advice column, an advice columnist. You remember the Dear Abby and Dear
Mm-hmm.
Ann from the old school. And somehow I ended up as the advice columnist and spent hours studying what makes people tick. So by the time I got to college, I was a psychology major, got my degree in psychology as an undergrad, and then was working on campus as a campus leader and discovered they pay people to work on campuses. How do you get to do that? And they said, you go get your master's degree in college administration, which I
Okay.
did. And so that's what led to my higher ed career, and ended up working at 4 state universities and ultimately as a dean of students. But I do feel like it was that quest to figure out what makes people tick. How do you get into people's heads, and how do you gain cooperation? And I had a lot of opportunity as a supervisor over the years before I became a speaker. So that's really where it all started, is Dear Abby type column from my high school paper.
So when you decided to write, if you can't say something nice, what do you say? You'd been talking about this topic, I assume, for a while, and you realized this was really something that you were asked to speak about a lot, and something you really loved talking about. What was kind of the background on how that book got put together?
What was interesting to me is I start every presentation, even now, or most presentations, by asking the audience to complete the phrase. If you can't say something nice, and people will say, don't say anything at all. And again, everybody knows that. But what would happen is almost every time I spoke, someone would come up to me afterwards and they say, well, Sarita, if you can't say something nice, what do you say? So word for word, I was getting that question. If you can't say something nice, what do you say? And I used to joke about, oh, someday I'm going to write a book with that title. And I think I even, for a
Wow.
brief time, I had a keynote by that title. And then I killed the keynote temporarily and decided to put my energy into writing the book. And so it came directly from the question I kept getting asked by people in my audiences.
So this is a problem that a lot of people have.
That's right.
Nice people, not so nice people, they all have this problem.
Oh, yeah.
So the not nice people probably solve it the wrong way, and the nice people probably don't get anything done by the way they handle it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Because, people seem to think that there's only 2 options. People think there's ugly and saying something, making demands, being obnoxious, or being quiet and not saying anything at all. And my contention is that there's a middle ground where we can say what we mean in a nice way. So I think that's the goal, is to find that middle ground.
And walk us through that process just a little bit, what the mindset or the process in our mind should be to really figure out, what is it that we need to say here. I mean, for me, I always have this phrase in my head: kill them with kindness.
Yes.
Don't prejudge anybody where they're coming from. People could be having a bad day. People could be always a certain way when they write emails, when it's not reflective of who they are in person. So just understand what they're asking as best you can and try and deliver that to them. Is that really,
Yes,
the way
yes.
to do it?
Well, I think it does, ironically, still go back to what I call my bossy big sister ways, because my bossy, I always tell people the bossy big sister way is the aggressive, obnoxious way, which is, the finger pointing. You better, you
Right.
need to do, what you should do. And when anytime we say, you should, you better, people kind of get their defenses up. And so I always think that and then sometimes people say, well, I'm just not going to say anything. But I think the middle ground is when we take responsibility and say, you know what, I need this, or I would appreciate, I need your help. I appreciate your letting me know if there's going to be a problem. So it's really about the I and the we, which I hate to say it goes all the way back to good old assertiveness 101 back in the dark ages. So I feel like that's where the middle ground lives.
So not saying you and not saying you should, or kind of putting them on the defensive right off the bat.
Yeah, because I think most of us don't want to be told, what you should do, you need to, you better. I think we do kind of put our defenses up when we get told what you better do this.
Are things changing also today? I know the pandemic changed everything. The way we communicate became a lot more distant and a lot more, electronic.
Yeah.
But, before the pandemic started, were things already shifting into kind of a new way of maybe hiding behind the keyboard or hiding behind the text rather than
Totally.
actually talking in person in a conversation, either on Zoom or on the phone?
Totally. And in fact, it was 2012, which is now 9 years ago, that one of my clients asked me, can you include in your communication presentation something about the fact that we're all online? And that's what actually prompted me to start doing research about the online communication and how people have really kind of gotten a little cowardly in hiding behind their computer and, lobbing crazy comments because they feel like they can. And so it has been way before the pandemic that people were kind of hiding behind email and hiding behind online communication.
Yeah. So what's the solution? What is the guideline here for people who work in just regular jobs who aren't necessarily leaders, and when they're dealing with their peers or when they're dealing with their superiors, and how do leaders handle this situation? Because in my opinion, personally, from my take on all of this, I have a much better success rate of getting the client what they want and understanding where they're coming from if I have a phone call with them or if I have a conversation with them.
I do think that one of the times that I always recommend that you pick up the phone is, like you say, when there's some problems to be solved, some discussion to happen. That's not something that can be easily done via email. But what I've found in a lot of the companies I've spoken at and people I've talked to who are working in the trenches is that it's about people's preference. In fact, one of my colleagues she works for a high-tech company, and she says in their employee profile, they have to rank order their preference. So for her, for example, the internal communication messaging system is her number one, email is her number two, text is her number three, and a phone call is her number four. And so it's kind of the old rule of not doing unto people as you want them to do unto you, but doing unto people as they want to be done unto. And so it's even with our clients and people we don't work with on a daily basis, we can always say, hey, what's your preference? And then they're more likely to be positive when you respond in the way they want us to communicate with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Interesting. And is it the other thing that I was thinking, is it a issue when some people are just socially inept or socially awkward, or maybe just not the nicest person and all, maybe not the nicest person to deal with? Can the leaders kind of mitigate that situation? I remember a great story about Nolan Bushnell, who created and started Atari. He had Steve Jobs working for him, and Steve was kind of a hothead and had some things to say that were very controversial, and he would actually call people out on things they were doing. So he said, you know what, Steve, you can work the night shift. And there was no night shift, but he created a night shift for Steve because he was so great. He didn't want to fire him. He didn't want to lose him,
Right.
but he just needed to separate him from everybody else. Are there ways that people have been kind of working towards doing that kind of a thing with difficult people, or what do
Yeah,
we
in other
do?
words, they don't want him, they don't want him to have to contact anybody or be in touch with anybody. And it is hard for people who are not necessarily the outgoing folks. But I found that people who are not necessarily outgoing thrive even better with the email because they don't have to actually be face to face. But I love telling the story. I call it the angry email story. It actually is the opening story in my new book. And it's about a colleague of mine who literally wrote an email cursing out her boss. And thankfully, she did not send the email. She actually showed it to me before she deleted it. And I talk about how I was going to put the email on my slides in my presentation, but then I realized that this woman would end up in the audience one day, and it would be all over. So what I do is I share the words that she uses. In her first email, the one she deleted, she used words like toxic, condescending, overbearing. But then she composed the same email with more positive words, but still got the point across. Things like, we would appreciate, we hope you understand. So the words were shifted, and she was able to share the same message. And so I talk a lot about in our emails, are we putting positive words, like I call them can-do words. I can absolutely do that. I can definitely do that. I'd be happy to support you. Those are the kind of positive words that we can use in our emails. Even if you're not the most personable person, you can use those emails to connect and be more approachable. And so when we're communicating with email, instead of just saying, get that to me by Friday, we can say, please get that to me by Friday. Thank you so much for being prompt. So I feel like the old other wisdom from my mother, the please and thank you, prevail, as we are virtual, but it also works as we go back to being in person. Please and thank you still work.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I use more exclamation points than I probably should in my emails as well, because I want to convey the excitement or the enthusiasm I have for what I'm doing for them or what they're doing.
I have to, now don't get me on that tangent, Chris, because I can do a whole hour commentary on exclamation points. And in fact, one of the things I share in my presentations is that I do 3 checks when 3 types of checks before I send my email.
Right.
The first check is spell check, obviously. The second check is the kindness check, as a friend of mine calls it, which is looking, is there a please or thank you somewhere? We call it the kindness check or the care check. And then number 3, of course, is the punctuation check. Because like you, I want to use exclamation marks behind every sentence. and I have to, I've had to wean myself of that.
That's
so in
funny.
fact, that was the bane of my editor's existence in this most recent book. Is she said, really? I mean, really? Like, she said, I'm not even going to edit the exclamation marks anymore. I'm going to tell you after every chapter, look and see how many do you have and take some of them out.
You have to do it. That's funny.
Yeah.
So speaking of that new book, say what you mean in a nice way. There's a play on words there, just like virtually speaking, there's a play on words here. So basically you want to be mean. That's the premise of the title, right? You want to be mean right now, but you've got to say it in a nice way. Tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, I think I love the fact that you picked up the play on words, the mean and nice, so the juxtaposition of the mean and nice. Although I always think that we don't necessarily have to be mean, but we might want to be truthful. I think it's helpful to be honest, helpful to be, authentic. And all of that. And so I think that's when I think of say what you mean, I think of truth, honest. I think we could all benefit from having more truth tellers, because a lot of people say what we want to hear, but that's not very useful, especially if you ask for someone's feedback and they kind of sugarcoat it. What good is that? So I think we do want to be truthful and authentic and honest, but we don't have to crush we don't have to crush the other person in the process. We can say it in a way that's more about, I'm noticing or I'm observing, I'm wondering if, or maybe we could, versus, you really need to do blah, blah. You better do blah, blah. You should stop doing that, things like that.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part of the new book? Is there a chapter? Is there a story that you could share with us that's kind of your favorite?
Now, I have a feeling you probably already perused my book, haven't you, Chris? Because I have some favorite. some favorite things in there. And one of the things that I love to share, and I actually have a clip on my Facebook business page with my little rap. And so, of course, I have to include that here because this is a rap that I used to use to wrap up my presentation on high touch relationships in high tech times. And I've decided to record a little snippet, but I'll share it here with your
Okay.
viewers because I think this really sums up everything that I have to say about online communication.
All right.
So here's my brief rap. LOL, TMI, OMG. I can't understand what you're saying to me. The magic words is still thank you and please, even if you text or tweet with ease. Bold fonts, all caps, our email attitude. And texting while we're talking is just rude. Ditch the email, catch a clue. Pick up the phone if something's bothering you. And if you can't say something nice, what do you say? Whatever it is, don't post it on Facebook today. So that's my 2 cents worth on online communication. And it is in my book, one of the favorite parts, to answer your question, one of the favorite parts of my section in the book on high touch, high tech.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's it. That's
All right.
what
I have another question that I'm eager to know. You've been doing this, talking about this topic for a long time, and you've really made this your area of expertise so people can just think of you when they need better communication and when they need to deal with difficult people. I've had people talk to me about that for years. So can you give me a story where somebody has had a success and they've had a difficult person and they fixed it, and they fixed that person, or they fixed the way that person was dealing with them, or they were difficult and now they're not anymore? Can you tell me any good news on that?
You know, I don't get asked that question a lot.
Good.
And so I'm pondering it. And the first story that popped in my mind was a story that almost had me in tears right before I went onto the stage. And it was a story, some clients thankfully bring me back every couple of years. And so it's always fun when I go have a repeat client. And so it was a client, it was a housing company and housing management company. And they invited me back for the second time. And I guess about a year, it was only a year later, which is, in our world, they usually wait a few years before they bring you back. But they brought me back a year later, and they had about maybe 400 or 500 employees, and they were all gathering, and they were about ready to introduce me when this man ran up to me, and he says, "Sarita, I just want to tell you, I was about to get divorced right before you spoke last year. And I tried something that you mentioned, and my wife and I are still together." I'm like, what? I definitely don't propose to be any marriage counselor kind of person. I always focus on the workplace with a few little nuggets to take home.
Right.
But what he said was exactly what we've been talking about. He said he was speaking to his wife like, you better, you need to, you should, which of course made her feel like she was totally being put down and treated like a child. And he said, I just switched it and start saying, I really need your help. I would appreciate, could you possibly versus you better, you need to. And that's probably the best in my 20 some years as a speaker. That's probably the highest praise that I have ever received. And you think something so small and little like that wouldn't make a difference, but it was just that little shift he made. And so a year later, they were good. So
you've got to be on guard and watching what you say in today's world more than ever, anywhere, especially online, but also at home, but also at work. You can't turn that off. You've got to filter. And you're definitely somebody who helps us understand that. And I have had, as you know, clients book you more than once, and it's great because they want to remind people that communication can be easy if we just think about who we're talking to and how they're perceiving what we're saying, and how we can edit ourselves a little bit, be it electronically or in person.
Well, and I have to tell you, there's an acronym in my book that I'd like to mention because this was a time when I was on the receiving end of a positive communication. And I share in the book an acronym called CARE, C-A-R-E, which is ironic because during this pandemic, there's been all kinds of programs with the word care in them.
Right.
And I'm like, that my story has nothing to do with any of that. My incident happened in 2018, which is 3 years ago. My husband and I were returning from back east, and we were stuck in the airport in Dallas. And, I try as the person to talk about positive communication, not to have a meltdown or a hissy fit, in the middle of the airport. I try to walk my talk. So when I was in this situation, our flight was completely canceled. And, it wasn't the worst travel ordeal. I could spend a whole day talking about travel ordeals,
Yeah.
but it was the best display I'd ever seen on the part of a person. In fact, I always named Trisha and Hannah are the two women's names, and I always shout out their name when I can. But they were airline ticket agents, and I was so inspired after their interaction. And again, who does this? But I went back and I wrote a blog about it, put it on my website, and then fast forward 3-4 years later, it's now a story in my book.
Right.
But the acronym that they prompted me to write, to come up with, was CARE, C-A-R-E, and the C stood for collaborative. Instead of saying instead of doing things to us, it was, let's see if we can get you another flight. Let's see if we can get you rescheduled. Let's see if we can get you back home to San Diego. So it was a lot of we and let's versus, you need to sit over there and wait until we get this resolved.
Right.
Sometimes, you're treated poorly. And so that I was just struck by the collaborativeness. And then the second was A, which I thought was really cool because they were attentive. They'd come back and give us updates. Hey, here's what's going on. We have some options. We'll get back to you. So they were very attentive, didn't forget about us. And then the R was results. They got us home. All the nice communication in the world without results is pointless.
Right.
And then of course, E was empathy. I know it's been a long day. I know this is frustrating. Being able to acknowledge that. And much like in your interview with Chris and Derek, the master negotiators,
Yes.
I heard in their interview, they were talking about people want to be heard. And I personally think that all the negativity that we see, both at work and at home, is people not feeling heard. And so that E in CARE was powerful. So consultative, attentive, results, and empathy. Is, I think, a powerful combination. And my hats off to those ladies in the airport at the ticket booth that day.
And is there anything you can do to get the people you're working with at the ticket counters with all the other cancellations that you're going through? Because I know you fly a lot. All the speakers do.
Yeah.
Was there anything you took from that you could do from your side of things to get them to react that way, like those two ladies did?
My favorite question to ask anytime I'm in a situation like that is really along the lines of that first letter, the C, the consultative approach. And I probably had been doing this even before I encountered these two top ticket agents. But my question is always, how can we resolve this? Which is I have a top 10 positive communication phrases I talk about all the time. And one of the phrases, phrase number 2, is, how can we resolve this? Because, and I found that when things have gone awry and I've said to someone like a ticket agent, well, I need to get to this city. I have a presentation tomorrow. The flight's been canceled. How can we resolve this? And a lot of times they're shocked because they're basically used to being yelled at and cursed out. Right. And when you say, how can we resolve this? I always see the stunned look, on their faces. And so I would say that.
But it's not like this. How can we resolve this? It's more like, how can we resolve this?
Now, funny you should say that, Chris, because I love talking about the evil twin who we all have, the evil twin who lives over here on the sidelines. And the evil twin sometimes is doing the ugly nonverbals. The evil twin is sometimes saying, well, how can we resolve this? But then I have to check myself and how can we resolve this? So our nonverbals sometimes give us away and get us in trouble.
Right. Okay. So you just teased us. So just give us a couple more of the top 10 phrases that are go-to phrases we should keep in mind, not to put you on the spot. I'm sure you have them memorized at this point.
I do. And phrase number 8 is my favorite. So I'll talk about phrase number 8, which is help me understand. And I joke about how I borrowed that phrase from my favorite TV series detective, Columbo, the wrinkled raincoat wearing detective, and how he used to say, I'm confused. I thought we agreed, help me understand. And I feel like, so many times things go awry, things don't work out as we had hoped. And we have to say, help me understand what happened. Or better yet, you're in a push-pull situation, maybe in a staff meeting and somebody's shooting down your ideas. Oh, that won't work. Oh, that's not going to happen. We have to say, help me understand what your concerns are. Help me understand what went wrong last time, so we don't make the same mistake this time. Yeah. So that's my favorite, number 8.
I like that.
And I talk a lot about that. So.
I love that. And to find out the other 8, you're going to have to read the book.
Well, yeah, they're in the book. And then I might jump in and just put in a little commercial message, because I actually have a PDF with 50 phrases
Ooh.
that I offer. And those people who want to text Sarita Talk to a 5-digit code, 22828. So just put Sarita Talk in the message and send it to 22828. You'll automatically get a PDF with 50 phrases.
Oh, I
So
love that.
yeah, so that's
You'll
something
have to let me know
today.
how many people actually do that, because that's the first
Yeah.
time somebody's ever done that. I love that.
Yeah, so I usually offer that at my keynotes. Because people always say, you got any more phrases? What
Right.
else you got? So
Right. Yeah, you're full of great information, great ideas, a lot of research, a lot of years of seeing this stuff work, and you've written 2 awesome books on it. So you are so awesome, and this is really important right now, because, like I said, I feel like the world is a little more tense
Yep.
than it has been. Even though we're coming out of this thing, there's still a lot of tension in the air. There's still a lot of people doing 2 people's jobs,
Yep.
a lot of people overworked, and a lot of people trying to figure out how to do this job that they have. So
Yeah.
we all have to be patient, and we all have to be empathetic, and this is a really, really important message. So I'm so happy you were on now, and I've been looking forward to it. So thank you so much, Sarita, for coming on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, work with you, and this was really, really fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I will talk to you soon, and have a good rest of your year.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.